What's up, everybody? It's Frankie Finn, and just so you guys know, by the way, I put this picture here to start on purpose. There's a lot of you guys have told me that like I make really low tech videos, and I could have a better microphone and all that. And I know that, and I used to make a lot of videos like that actually that were really well done and high production values, and the real pain in the ass and so what I wanted to give you guys instead is really good information, which is far more important to me than like production values and flashy. So if you want like the flash and the cars and all that, I'm probably not the person to follow. If you want to build a really cool ass agency that it gives you a really cool travel lifestyle, there is no one better for that, or at least maybe not many. Um, so let's talk. This video is one of the things you guys were really interested in, which is how to build an automated team that does everything for you, because it's really cool when you build an agency that does everything for you. And I don't necessarily have like everything figured out, but I'll tell you, like, I do have a pretty fucking cool life. Like, here's some of the photos you can see. I hang a lot with my daughters. It's not an accident. We have so many cool photos. We go cool places. I basically spend most of the day with them, and our agency, little by little, still plugs away and keeps growing. And this is, a friend of mine who's working on being a billionaire, and trip to Norway, and this is a trip to my hometown for my brother's wedding, and this is a trip to Germany, and I don't even remember where this one was. Here's our road trip in Montreal. This was in Sacramento, California. This was in an island in Spain. A friend right here owns the biggest agency in all of Europe. And, these were motorcycle rides in Thailand, and this is hiking a volcano, and this is, just hanging with some friends in San Francisco. And where was this? This was in Santa Fe, New Mexico. This was in Nashville, and this is in Sedona. So I'm not like trying to brag, because I want you guys to have what you guys want for yourself. Here's some cool Hollywood parties and things like that. But I just want to show you guys, like, when this is the real value of automating. Isn't so like, yeah, it's nice to have money on autopilot, but it's really cool to have your business support your lifestyle. So that's what I want to impress upon you guys more than anything. Because it's not really about me. Yeah, I've done some cool shit, but I believe you guys can do all that cool shit too. So let me tell you what automation means from a technical standpoint. It means your team signs clients. So when you start having clients that you don't know personally, because your team and your processes sign them up, you'll know you've done this successfully. And also the delivery side. So your clients actually get great results after you sign them up. They're happy, your processes are doing the work. The communication is continuous, especially in this business. Communication is so much of the battle. So when they like love you and think you're awesome and do wonders, think your service is great, but you're not actually doing the one doing it. And also your team itself grows, so that like when you need to hire more virtual assistants or video producers or whatever it is that is the basis of it, that process happens without you as well. And then ultimately, this is the real litmus test. And there's challenges to doing this. Like, I don't want to make this sound like the easiest thing in the world, because it's not. But you can take time off, and when you come back, the business is better. So you'll know this, like, if you leave for like 2 weeks and you come back and your team says, hey, we signed 8 clients while you're gone, and here's where we're at. That's what like automation eventually brings you to. So before we begin, I just want to give you guys a couple book recommendations that were tremendously helpful for me. You can get them on Audible if you're one of those people like me. You can also get them for like, 10, 15, 20 bucks on Amazon each. So the first one, and this is probably the most important of the 3 for this process, called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. I'll give you the big idea from it in case you don't want to read it, but basically everything you do is a process, and you can clone yourself with checklists and process maps. So getting it out of your head, the things you do to get results for clients and to sign clients, and getting it into a step-by-step process that somebody can go and do what you do by just following a checklist. That alone will make you go further, because more than anything, when you're trying to do this, you're trying to clone yourself. Here's another one. It's called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And the big idea is about doing less overall things, but being better at the few things that you do. And this is really interesting, because you don't think about this in the beginning. But as you go to scale, if you do a lot of things in your agency, like if there's a lot of moving pieces, you will have a fucking really, really difficult time automating it. But if you just do like 1, 2 things really well, less but better, this process will work a lot better. So when you think about it, like McDonald's is probably the worldwide leader in like automating a service business. And you know, regardless of what you think about McDonald's as a restaurant, as far as their processes and their franchise, they're absolutely without question world class because you can plug and play anybody. And when McDonald's first started, all they did were hamburgers and French fries. That's it, 2 things, right? So yeah, you know, their menu probably has 100 things on it now, but when they were beginning, they were just less but better, right? Like one hamburger, one French fries, and automating that really, really quickly. So this is really, really key because a big part of scaling is not just building checklists, but it's actually like eliminating the complexity of your business. Because those aren't really problems when when you're one person and you're a freelancer and you got 4 clients, big deal. But when you have 80 clients and you got a team of 20, and you're doing 75 different things, you just won't be able to manage the chaos of it. So it's way easier if you're just making everybody hamburgers and French fries. And then this one isn't necessarily essential, but it's a really great book by Ray Dalio, who owns the biggest hedge fund in the world or manages the biggest hedge fund in the world. Brilliant financial mind as well if you listen to him about investing, which I am right now. So during this pandemic, if you want to get rich, by the way, somebody to listen to is Ray Dalio. But he talks a lot about documenting the principle you use to make decisions. And this is particularly true. Ray Dalio gets in, it's dealing with the unknowns because life is going to bring you curveballs, business is going to bring you curveballs, and it's documenting the things that are important to you about making decisions. So like, for example, some people have a value of money. So like, you know, I'm sure you guys all know this, like I know people that will drive an hour and a half to save $5 on something. And to me personally, that's fucking insane because my time is of 90 minutes spent doing that is far more valuable than the $5 that I would save doing that. And so those are examples of 2 different values. So that other person is making their decision based on, you know, save the most amount of money, and I'm making that decision on time being the most valuable. How can we save time? And so when you document those things, like where I say time is the most valuable thing, not saving money, then people know what to do when they're faced with the decision where they got to choose between time and money. So this is really, really key to get those out. Now, if you guys are just starting and you're just a freelancer, or you got a couple of like virtual assistants, or you occasionally hire some people on, you know, freelancing job websites that work for you part-time here and there or on a project basis, this may not seem very important what I'm about to say, but it's actually so damn important if you want to grow, and that is a clear documented mission. And I'll tell you why, because when you tell people what you want to do and why you want to do it, this mission is going to underline everything. Now, I'll give you a real example, and this comes from a friend of mine who has a lot of success. He's built, you know, one 8-figure business and one 7-figure business. And what he built his business around was client service, which is over communicating, making people feel good. And this is interesting, by the way, because everybody thinks you have to build an agency around like, I get the best results. And that's not actually true. He does get his clients good results, but there's probably people who do better results, but they're just fun to deal with. They're easy, they communicate well, they care about you as a person, they stay on top of things, they make sure you're informed. If that's a value to you, there's no better agency in the world. So when they bring on people, you know, it's easy for them to do because they're saying, hey, we're all about client service. They say it in their ads, they say it in their hiring process, they say it when they sub out work, that the most important thing is communication and client service and taking care of people, and they can input their values throughout the business. So when you get clear on like, what's this really about, and this has to be more than just like, we exist to make money. At the very least, you have to exist to make at least one person's life easier. And so when you have all that in place, it'll start underlying your actions, and they'll get more organized and systematized and about a big idea. So you have to be clear about the big idea if you really want to grow and scale this thing, because otherwise it just won't. Because if your business exists like, hey, so we can make money, people don't get excited to work for you. People don't know what they're supposed to do. They don't know what doing a good job for a client is, right? Like, let's say a client said, I got $2 leads for a client, but I was really rude to them. Well, if that's my mission of client service, then they didn't do a good job. So the more clear you are about this, the more it'll like eliminate some of the obstacles of scaling and so forth. So the overall goals of this, and I'm going to show you guys some examples, like this isn't just theoretical, but you want to firstly like clone yourself, right? Because you only have so much time in a day. And so you can't be like prospecting all day long. The idea actually, and we talk a lot about this in our agency mastermind, but just to give you guys a little insight, is like once you get something working, the real value is the process that made it work. You can put somebody and plug and play into your process. So like we just finished a cold outreach boot camp, and a couple of the people got some people to respond and got some interested leads, and they followed up with them and so forth. And that's all really good and dandy, but the real key is when you document that, now you can just slip a virtual assistant in and they clone you, and you can be prospecting all day long for like $2 an hour, right? So the first thing you want to do is clone yourself. The next thing you want to clone are your working processes. And the key is working, because what happens is a lot of times people try and make a process before they have the thing working. So like you can't hire somebody to do cold outreach if you don't have cold outreach working. So I would suggest the first couple of days or weeks or even a month, if it takes that long, do it yourself and get it working, and then process it and McDonald's it and turn it into burgers and French fries for someone else. But it's very, very key. You want to clone working processes. And then, of course, when you get into having managers and project managers and people oversee things, there's going to be things that just don't always fall in your neat little checklist. But if you clone your decision-making principles by spelling them out, like what's important to you in a decision, just like I gave an example, like I would rather save time than money. I'd rather keep the client happy than have a refund. Those things like show up, and usually you want to have like maybe 10 principles that guide that. And what happens is it makes easier for your managers to implement those decisions. So you may not be at the stage where you're thinking about all these things, but if you build them right on the first day, it gets way easier on day 300 when you're there. So let's get into the steps here that like actually allow it to automate so you can do the cool shit. So the first thing is you got to document everything, and I would say everything that works, into steps, step by step, step 1, step 2, step 3. And this will be really hard for you if you're a creative type, because the first time you do everything, it's almost instinctual. You don't think about the steps that you take, and you don't slow it down. And so the first time you do this, every process that you do will take you 2 to 3 to maybe even 4 or 5 times as long as it normally would. But you're creating the assets so that somebody else can do that. And I'm going to tell you, this is probably the worst part of growing an agency when you're doing this, because it's very tedious, it's very boring, and there's a lot of other crazy things that are going on. Like when you're at this point, like we have a guy in our mastermind, Kyle, he's got 30 virtual assistants, and he's going through this exact process right now and systematizing all his SEO and his hiring and all that. Well, with 30 staff and a whole bunch of clients, like there's shit going on. There's people asking questions, there's moving pieces, there's fires to fight. And you got to sit down in a dark room and type up step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. So it's really boring. And so I always tell people, like, if you're going to do this for real, it's harder before it's easier. And I know that's not like really fun to hear, but I want to give you guys like the real brutal truth about like running a successful agency, not like pipe dreams, like you're going to have a Ferrari and mansions without any work, which, that stuff sells, but it's not realistic. And I'm going to tell you, this is just my experience. If you're a very analytical person, you may enjoy this. If you're a creative person like I am, this part is a grind, and it fucking sucks because you're slowing yourself down and you're typing it out, and it's just really tedious. There's no real shortcut I've found to doing this. Now, the next thing is when you get through this, is you want to build a process library. And I'll show you an example of a couple of these. So you can use software to assist you, Trello, Asana, Basecamp. I'm going to tell you personally, as you can tell by all my videos and everything I do, I'm very low tech. Like I do a lot of our selling through Google Docs. My videos have shitty microphone quality. I've had so many people tell me about that. But but I just keep everything in a Google spreadsheet and have my team refer to like one master spreadsheet where they can go back and forth. So let me show you a couple of examples of this, like when you have your processes and things like that. So this is like a calling script I was using actually with a client when we were going through this is, you know, and it's not the most pretty thing, but this is like, we would call on prospects who haven't purchased and we were interested in either upselling them or finding out why they didn't join so that we could then, you know, improve the whole thing. So this was like basically the script for somebody to use, and we had actually tested this out on a few people. And here's just like some of the stuff I did with SEO. So like one of the things that I was very big on is saving all my backlinks in a file in case we needed to like undo them. So like here's just like some of my random notes from my SEO agency. And here's an example, by the way, you know, when I'm dealing with a VA, so I've got somebody who's like reaching out, doing podcasts for me. And I found this to be the best way personally is I do all my processes through video. So I use a lot of Loom or Camtasia, if you got it, or Jing is another one. And I record the screen. And so this one is like me explaining where I find the podcast from, how I reach out to these people, which ones I'm interested, and I just show them with the video, and then they can refer back to the video when they have any questions, and here's the script we send, and there you go. And that's the whole thing, right? Like that's how they're able to do it. But what has this enabled me to do? It enables me to clone my podcasting process, which I've used to get on a lot of really big podcasts, and it works. And you can then, you know, clone something that's working for you using that. Also have another one. This is from an interview I did. And I thought this guy just really did an excellent job. And I like to show you guys agencies that, especially at certain pieces, are just better than my own. And this is Jamie Stenhouse, and he's automated his cold outreach. And so he called it relationship building at scale. So like if you're just one person and you're building a relationship, that's really, really key to cold outreach, not just spamming message, but building real relationships. But this is how he trains his virtual assistants to do it at scale. And so these are some of his files in Basecamp where his team can log in and they go step 1. If the person does this, do that. If someone invites you to join a group, then please follow here, do this step. If someone mentions you in a comment, do this. If someone has started studying, do this. And so he's got a process for what to do with all these things. And it's like, it's quite sophisticated. Here's how to comment on their articles, and here's what to say to show up as somebody, you know, pretty profound stuff, by the way. And this is like a very, very sophisticated version. And then, of course, you usually are going to want some kind of tracking for that. Let's just see. I don't know. My internet's going a little slow here. Okay. So he's got a spreadsheet where he can track. Here's how many people showed up each day. Here's the processes we got done and so forth. And here's how we're making out. And did we do these things today? And it allows him to stay on top of it and kind of at least loosely tracking what's working and what's not working. So you do those things and you're in some pretty damn good shape, by the way. Okay, so this is key. You're eventually gonna, if you're there already, or you get to that point, what you're gonna want to do is give your team your process and nothing else. So like at McDonald's, like the manager doesn't stand over your shoulder and tell you how to cook a hamburger. He hopes that the training they gave you is enough and watches the process. And this is really, really key because if you want to be able to step away from the business, the process has to be, your documented process has to be self-explanatory. And this is interesting because I hear a lot of times people say, you know, what did you do to find a good employee or a bad employee? And more often than not, it's more actually about if you have good processes, almost all your employees will be good because you're easy to understand and you're easy to follow. And if you have bad processes and unclear instructions, then nobody will seem good. And it usually has more to do with you as a boss and less about who you hire, although I'm not saying who you hire doesn't make a difference. But your processes are more important than your people in many ways. And that's not to say people aren't important, but I just mean if you do this, your agency can run pretty much by itself. Now, here's what's going to happen. When you give people your processes in the real world, they're going to have questions, and it almost never just works 100% of the time right away, first time. And so how you want to deal with this, and this is really key, is you always want to deal with their questions. Obviously, you're going to give them the answer, but you want to do it by fixing the process. So like I might say, hey, like, my assistant now, Raz, I made an update to the process. Please check that out and let me know if that explains it. And if not, I'd be happy to update it further. But what happens is if you answer all the questions onesie, twosie, then you never get to remove yourself. You want the process to be self-explanatory. So there needs to be giving it to someone and letting them try and execute and making mistakes and it not being perfect and then refining it. And you can't do it without that. But what'll happen is after like 3 to 4 iterations of using the process, it will work without you. And that won't happen on day one, even after sometimes like it feels really good when you get it all typed out and now you think your agency is going to run without you. You're probably still a couple of months away at that point. But once you have it where your processes just explain themselves, it'll happen without you. And then eventually, and this probably in my experience from start to finish takes about 6 months to really like build. You can do it faster, by the way, but the first time through, I just want to give you guys a realistic expectation. It takes about 6 months, but eventually your entire business model, like Jamie's cold outreach here, you can manage the entire thing by just showing up once a week and looking at a spreadsheet and asking a couple of questions. It does take some time to get there, but when you do it, it really makes your life easier because your business grows without you doing all the pieces. So let's talk about some mistakes that happen. I'll tell you the 2 biggest ones that come up. One is people just dabbling in too many things. So if you do web design, you do SEO, you do AdWords, that is all fine and dandy when you got a 5-client agency and you're managing it yourself, or you get 10 clients and you got a freelancer or 2 working for you. You can do as many things as you want. But what happens is custom work does not scale well at all. You can't scale custom work and proposals and all those things because what will happen is there's too many moving pieces and too many processes, and your team will just be too confused at the mess in your head. So the only way to get past that is to follow the essentialism of think about less but better. And you can add processes later, but in the beginning, you really want to scale your agency with like hamburgers and French fries, or just hamburgers or just French fries, and do one thing exceptionally fucking well rather than doing 10 things mediocre. And you'll actually make more money. And the reason why most people get stuck in this is because, especially when you're starting out, you almost have to take all the money that shows up. And so it's hard because at some point you have to start turning people away who aren't an ideal fit. Like if somebody comes in and says, hey, I know you guys do hamburgers and French fries. Could you make me a milkshake? And even though you could make a milkshake, you have to say, hey, we can make you a milkshake, but to be completely honest with you, there are other people that make better milkshakes than us, and I'm going to refer you to somebody else. If you want hamburgers and French fries, we are the premier agency for you. So an easy way to deal with this, by the way, is to find a list of people you can refer people out to that are good and will also give you a kickback. So whenever you turn somebody away, you're still getting paid. And what'll happen is that will really help you to be just more narrow. It's counterintuitive because everybody thinks you'll make more money by being broad. And the opposite is true because what'll happen is you'll be drowning in custom work. Like I actually talked to an SEO guy, a couple of weeks back, very good guy. And he told me he has 8 clients and he's just basically like working his ass off all day long. And he can't keep up. And this is why, right? He has custom work. And he says, I want to scale it to 100,000 a month or whatever. And based on the structure he had, it was just impossible. Like you can't do it if you're doing 8 custom jobs because it's too complicated to bring in people. So hamburgers and French fries. The other thing I see is sometimes people have a working process and they're not doing too many things, but the process itself is just too complicated and has too many steps. So if you're doing SEO and there's like 18, SEO in particular is complex, right? So if you have 18 gazillion moving pieces in your SEO, you're gonna have a really hard time scaling that. because a lot of moving pieces. So one of the things that you want to do, and you don't really need to think about this when you have a 5-client agency or a 2-client agency, but you want to be thinking about as you're scaling, like, what can I eliminate? And you need to be pretty ruthless about it. You need to go, well, instead of having the employees think, like, what if I already had the French fries pre-portioned into bags, so they didn't even have to weigh them, they just dumped the bag of fries into the fryer, and that makes it just go faster, right? Like, you need to be thinking about those kind of things, because if you don't, what happens is you won't be able to scale complexity. So complexity in terms of custom work and complexity in terms of individual processes are basically the enemy of scaling. You want to do less but better, and that's why I say, like, The Essentialism is a really good book to read on that. Now, I'll give you some huge shortcuts on this that I wish I knew like 10 years ago. So you can get to something like this, like what, sorry, that's, where am I going here? Jamie, where you can get to something like Jamie has, where it's organized. You can buy other people's working processes. And this is why, like, I'm so big on this offer making skill, because the real asset, when you understand, are the processes that allow people to succeed. You don't even have to pay up front for these. So, like, I've started doing some motorcycle cases, and I'm just dabbling in a little bit. But the motorcycle cases is something that I know is really, really valuable to lawyers. It's like a $25,000 case, usually minimum. And I reached out to a guy who had working motorcycle cases and said, hey, could I pay you every single time I use this campaign that you've got working for motorcycle cases, and I'll just pay you a residual? And he said, yes, absolutely. And we agreed on a price. And what was really, really key is he never asked for any money up front on that. So I don't even have to pay to use his processes until they're working. So if you think, oh, I don't have a bunch of money in my agency, I'm just poor little me, 2-person freelancer, you're wrong, because with the right offer of like, hey, can I pay you residuals every time I use this? So others people's processes can be yours. So you can buy cold outreach, you can buy working ad campaigns, you can buy working processes to set client expectations, you can buy working salespeople, all of those in some form of like a royalty, commission, pay as it works kind of structure, meaning you only got to spend to use it. And this can allow your agency to get a lot further, a lot quicker. So like I could figure out motorcycle cases as well, right? Like I'm a pretty smart guy. Give me some ad money and some campaigns, I'll figure it out. But it's way, 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 way easier just to find somebody who's already got it working and start with their process, right? So that will make your life far, far easier. I wish I would have known this shortcut before, but just find somebody who's already got this and just say, hey, I'd be interested in buying it. Like, what would be, could we come to some terms where I paid you a royalty? And you'd be amazed. People will say yes. And actually makes your job a lot easier if you're just starting out and you want case studies, you know, like the motorcycle thing. It would take me a long time to get some case studies, or I can just say, hey, it's already working for these 12 lawyers over here who are using it. Right, so yes. Intellectual property. That's a whole separate discussion. But let me give you guys some ideas on hiring. When you get into hiring virtual assistants or anybody who's like kind of directly communicating with you and your clients, basically anything that's not a technical skill. Like if you're hiring somebody for like web design or programming or to run ads, they should probably already have the skill set they need. But most jobs in your agency, they're going to come in needing training from you. And a lot of times you're hiring them to do, for lack of a better term, grunt work. And so the number one skill that I've always looked for in virtual assistants is English. If you guys are on the same page when you communicate, you'll do a far better job than if you're not. Now, I'll tell you another shortcut I learned is when you screen for people in the beginning, I treat it like a reality show. So have you ever seen like a show like the Bachelor or the Bachelorette? Let me like see one of these. I'm gonna screw up the Bachelorette. Let's see the Bachelorette. So it's a show where I guess like one pretty girl has like 20 guys who are interested in her, or you can do the Bachelor. Let's do the others, the sexist version here. So it's one guy and all these girls are competing to like win a relationship with this guy. It's pretty fucking ridiculous. But in doing so, what happens is people work for it because that environment creates like a competitive environment where people are willing to work for it and actually want to win. So the way I've always done this is a small first date. So like, let's say, I'll give you a real example. I'm hiring an article writer for creating content for my agency. I will hire 20 um, virtual assistants to write me one custom article for $5 or $10. And what you'll find when you do that is probably half of them just never even get back to you at all, or maybe 40%. So you might end up with like 12 people that get back to you, and you pay, $5, $10. And then what happens is you'll be able to rule out at least half of them, usually more, just without even like needing any more. You look and their article's not so good. And usually I find you'll end up with 4 good ones or so. And what I do with those 4 good ones is I give them a second date. And I say, okay, I have another small thing I would like to try out before we work together. And what will happen is I'll have them write a second article or do something else that I would actually use in my agency. And what happens is I'll be left with like 2 good ones that I started with 20. And what happens is when most people hire, they hire based on like how they sound in an interview or how you connect, but you learn far more working together than you ever would. This will save you so many headaches of dealing with people who just aren't a good fit and just make your life so much easier. And what'll happen is you'll end up with good people. And then when you combine good people with good processes, they just make you look really good. So knowing that this is the process, the steps is that I should say first, you got to get your process working. And then you got to document that into steps. And you can do those at the same time. If you know you're going to scale your agency, you can, like say you're doing cold outreach, you can be documenting the steps you're taking as you're doing the cold outreach so that when you have it working, you can just refer somebody to the process. And then you got to build a library. And most people use software. I'm probably a bad example because I don't. And then you give the team the processes and then you refine by fixing the processes. And usually it'll take, like, in my experience, like 2 to 3 iterations to get it right. So the first thing you got to automate if you want it is just like getting clients. So the minute you can get clients without having to have your hands in it is the first step to having like a growing agency that is not really about you. And I've experienced this where it's really cool actually when you'll know you've achieved this well when you sign up clients that you didn't even know you had. Like when you come back on a Monday and they're telling you about 5 new people and you're going, that's really cool. Delivery, obviously, like getting results for people is every bit as important as making sales. But obviously there's nothing to deliver if you aren't getting clients. So you want to start here. And it's also, by the way, if you're starting your agency, this is all you got to do is you got to get in front of people and make offers. And then once you have that working, you got to systematize that process. Then you got to systematize delivery so that like you get results for people and they're happy and the communication pieces are getting in place. And then you have to systemize your team. So that means hiring people, training people, and retaining people. So when you get this in place, and I was probably not the best at this, but when you get this in place, what happens is your team grows and good people come in without you having to like manage everyone and interview them and all those things. Is that you can just deal with like one managerial person that oversees it all and they'll keep you updated, but it's your systems and processes that are doing that. And a lot of this comes out of having this clear mission, right? So when you have this clear mission that you're working on, and it doesn't have to be about saving the world. When I say a mission, sometimes mission, you think like, we're going to save 100,000 lives or whatever. It doesn't have to be something like that. It just has to be like clearly who you're for and what your advantage is and in what you want the main theme of your agency to be about. If you don't have that, you're just going to like basically take any client with a credit card, and that's really hard to scale. It helps you get started, but it won't go anywhere. Once you have 8 clients like that one guy, you'll be so stressed out and so busy that you won't be able to go past 8 clients, and you'll have this like invisible income and ceiling barrier that you just won't understand why it's there. So this is really, really key. But yeah, once you do that and like you get it in place, what happens is you just end up with a lot more free time. In fact, at first when you get it, you'll feel guilty, especially because usually you've spent 6 months grinding it out, getting all your processes and everything documented, and then all of a sudden you can just like disappear for 4 days and nobody needs you for anything. There's no fires that depend on you. There's nothing urgent. Everybody knows what they're supposed to do. Everybody knows what they're working on. The balls aren't getting dropped. And you can just show up once a week and like grow your agency just by, doing what Jamie's doing, where you're looking at a spreadsheet of the data of how we're performing. We had 37 bookings. How many did we close? How many of those clients are happy? What are we doing next? And you can like within an hour understand everything that's going on in your agency from a simple little spreadsheet. It does take some work to get there. So I don't want to like paint a picture that this is easy. And I would say whether that's me or someone else, and Jamie is a good person if you're actually looking at for cold outreach. He's got a coaching program as well. But if you're looking to get to that systematization thing, there are a lot of mistakes and pitfalls, and it's a long process that can kind of, it's not an overnight thing. It's an elephant, you got to eat one bite at a time. I would suggest getting someone to help you with that, because if you're at that stage, it's just, there's a lot of things that you don't necessarily know when you're doing it, that if you just learn from somebody who's been there, you'll make the whole journey a lot easier, and you can do it in like 3 months instead of 6, and you can get it right the first time, which most people don't. But this is it in a nutshell, is get the automation so that, here's the clear benefits. So you sign people, the clients are happy, the communication's on point, the team is growing, and you can take time off. And, like I said, let me just minimize these. And you can like actually, have a fucking life, not staring at an ad manager, because I'd much rather, be doing this, hanging with my bro on a mountain, or, doing podcasts, or just having little moments where we're taking little cute photos of my IDB in and around and spending time in nature. Like we spend a lot of time in nature, and that's a big part of that is all the automation. I mentioned the books that'll help you. If you want some links, I can share some links. The mission, and then, the steps. Document it, organize it all, give the steps to your team, and fix the mistakes with the processes. And these 2 mistakes will kill you, by the way. So these are the 2 things that are the enemy to that, because often they're the things that get you started, right? Like if somebody shows up and says, hey, I need you for AdWords, another person says, I need you for SEO, and then another person says, I need you for web design, you're going to take all those people. But if you structure your agency like that way going forward, there ain't no scale happening. And then just when the processes are too complicated, then you need too many moving pieces. And so, like I said, if I was to do this all over again, which I kind of am in some ways, I'm kind of innovating a new agency right now that's about influencers. I would buy other people's working processes. There's no part of me that would try and like create all my own from scratch, except for where necessary. And then, first date people, screen them on a really small first date. And I usually do 2 first dates and make sure they have good English if they're virtual assistants. And so even the same principle applies, by the way, if you're hiring, like say Facebook ads, rather than saying, let's enter into a 12-month contract and do blah, blah, blah. It's like, let's just run a little trial campaign and see if we work well together. And then if that goes well, we'll run a second and then a third and so forth. And then these are the things you got to automate in order: getting clients, delivering, and HR. By the way, it can be a little stressful if you grow this really fast, because one machine will break the other. Like if you get really good at systematizing and organizing getting clients, then overnight your delivery will break, because you'll just have too many clients coming in too fast, and you won't have the staff and you won't have the infrastructure to support it. And so you have to like systematize your delivery like really fucking fast. And it's very, very stressful because, clients can be unhappy and why did no one get back to me, and things like that happen because you got really too good at this system that it actually broke the second one. And then what happens is you'll get really, really good at delivering it and your process, but then you won't have people to put in those processes. And then you'll realize your HR is broken, and then you'll get that in place. And then when you do that, there's actually another step past here, which most of you will never need to get, but that's your management hierarchy. But when you get the management hierarchy in place, what happens is you can manage your business, like I said, where you're literally just showing up, looking at a spreadsheet, having a conversation with your manager, and then your spreadsheet is telling you what's important, and then you're focusing on like 1 or 2 or 3 key issues that come up from your numbers, and each week you're like resolving a new big problem and you're working on the key things. That's kind of the point it gets to. So I hope that makes sense for those of you guys looking to scale something that works without you. I would advise that like find somebody who's been there and done it and learn from them, because you'll make that journey like a lot faster than doing it yourself. Even if you have to pay somebody just like an hour of their time to look at their structure for this part right here, which is their process library. So that's like the simplest one. If you can just pay somebody like $100 to say, hey, can I look at how you have your Trello, Asana, or Basecamp and all that set up? Like, can I see how you structure it? You'll understand what you're building and why, and that'll make your life far, far easier and whole lot less mistakes. So I hope that makes sense, guys. Much, much love. Thank you guys for not giving me too much of a hard time about being so damn low tech, but that's just kind of how I roll. I will probably get a better microphone in the next month or two. I know the sound kind of sucks, but I think the audio or the visual quality, I'm just rolling with shitty, because I want to give you guys great information and not be bogged down with production values and all those things. I'm not trying to wow you or impress you with those. I just want to give you real shit that helps you in your journey. So much, much love, and we are going to hit end of the recording here.